Before the internet, boredom did not make people peaceful. It made them dangerous, creative, and weirdly confident. When nobody had a screen to stare at, they invented fun with flaming raisins, sewer tours, live ferrets, collapsing dancers, and full-size train crashes. So yes, your doom scrolling looks bad, but at least you are not paying money to watch two locomotives murder each other. 1. Ferret legging was a Yorkshire endurance contest built on one simple question. How badly do you want to impress people at a pub? Men would put live ferrets down their trousers, tie the trousers shut at the waist and ankles, and then stand there while the animals did what trapped, angry ferrets naturally do: bite, scratch, panic, explore. The rules were brutally clear. No underwear, no sedating the ferrets, and no crying your way out after 30 seconds because your sporting spirit has become a tiny furry chainsaw. It was especially associated with miners and working-class pub culture, where toughness was entertainment and common sense had apparently gone outside for a smoke. The record attempts lasted for hours, which is less a hobby and more a hostage situation inside your own pants. 2. Mummy. Unwrapping parties were exactly what they sound like, and somehow even worse. In the 19th century, wealthy Europeans became obsessed with ancient Egypt, so naturally the classy response was not, "Let us preserve these human remains," but "Let us invite guests, serve drinks, and peel this person open in the drawing room." Real Egyptian mummies were bought, shipped, displayed, and sometimes unwrapped in front of fashionable audiences who treated the whole thing like archaeology mixed with dinner theater. It was part curiosity, part empire, part extremely cursed interior design. A host might promise mystery, exotic knowledge, and a little dust from 3,000 years ago, because apparently Netflix had not yet arrived to save dead pharaohs from rich people with too much free time. Today, it feels horrifying, but back then, people called it culture. Very normal, very cursed. 3. Staged train crashes were the kind of entertainment that proved the 1890s had confidence, steam power, and almost no fear of consequences. Promoters in the United States would take two old locomotives, set them on the same track, accelerate them toward each other, and let thousands of spectators watch the metallic apocalypse. The biggest shows attracted crowds so large they looked like festivals, except the main attraction was two machines committing mutual destruction at full speed. At the famous Crush, Texas event in 1896, organizers expected spectacle, not flying boiler fragments. Then the boilers exploded, debris blasted into the crowd, and several people were killed or injured. So yes, the pre-internet version of Let's Watch a Crash compilation involved actual trains, actual tickets, and the tiny problem that the crash could crash back. 4. Escalator. Riding parties sound ridiculous now because today we ride escalators while staring at a phone like sad office zombies. But in 1898, when Harrods in London installed an early moving staircase, people treated it like a technological miracle with steps. Customers came just to ride it, because the idea of the floor politely carrying you upward felt like witchcraft wearing brass railings. Some passengers were so shaken by this mechanical hill that staff reportedly offered smelling salts and brandy at the top to calm their nerves. Imagine surviving the escalator, staggering into a department store, and being handed alcohol like you had just returned from crossing the Alps. It shows how modern convenience begins. First as a terrifying novelty, then as a luxury, then as something people complain about when it moves too slowly. 5. Shipwreck watching was one of the darker forms of coastal entertainment in 18th and 19th century Britain. When storms smashed ships near shore, locals sometimes gathered on cliffs to watch the disaster unfold, bringing food like they were attending a seaside performance. For people living before radio, cinema, or 24-hour news, a wreck was terrifying, rare, dramatic, and visible from the nearest high ground. But there was also a grim practical side. Wreckage and cargo could wash ashore, and some communities rushed to collect whatever the sea delivered. Sometimes that meant salvage. Sometimes it meant looting. The whole scene feels like a human comment section before the internet. Horror, curiosity, greed, and picnic baskets all standing in the rain together. Not exactly wholesome family entertainment, unless your family motto was, bring sandwiches, and moral confusion. 6. Goldfish swallowing became a college craze in the United States in 1939 because young men with too much confidence and too little supervision have always been a renewable resource. The stunt reportedly began as a bet, then spread through campuses as students tried to prove bravery by swallowing live goldfish. Not a sword, not fire. A tiny, confused aquarium fish, suddenly promoted from pet store decoration to fraternity challenge. Newspapers covered the trend, which only made it worse because nothing feeds a dumb fad like adults saying, "Surely no one else will do this." Students competed over numbers, crowds cheered, and universities looked around wondering how higher education had become a seafood-based dare system. It was pointless, gross, and strangely perfect for a world before viral videos. The only thing missing was someone yelling, "Like and subscribe," while a fish questioned existence. 7. Bedlam tourism was one of those historical entertainments that makes you want to take the entire 18th century aside and ask, "Are you okay?" London's Bethlem Royal Hospital, widely known as Bedlam, treated people with mental illness, but for a long time it also became a public attraction. Visitors could pay to walk through and stare at patients as if human suffering were a weekend exhibit. Families, thrill-seekers, and curious tourists came to gawk, laugh, whisper, and feel comfortably normal by comparison. It was cruelty dressed up as curiosity. The point here is not that the patients were strange. The point is that society was. Before modern ideas about mental health, entertainment could mean turning vulnerable people into spectacle. It is one of the clearest reminders that not every old pastime is charming. Some are just humanity being awful with tickets. 8. Zipline fire. Dragons were festival entertainment from early modern Europe that combined theater, fireworks, ropes, crowds, and the kind of planning you would expect from people who had not invented safety barriers. For celebrations, artists built dragon-shaped figures from wood, paper, cloth, and papier-mâché, filled them with fireworks or gunpowder effects, then sent them flying along cables over public spaces. In theory, the dragon roared across the sky, sparks flew, everyone gasped, and the festival became unforgettable. In practice, the dragon might jam, explode early, spit fire sideways, or drop flaming bits onto hats, wigs, awnings, and whatever unlucky person had chosen the best view. It was special effects before cinema, but with real fire and no reset button. Basically, a medieval fantasy parade sponsored by Bad Risk Assessment. 9. Ornamental hermits were a bizarre fashion among wealthy 18th century landowners who wanted their gardens to look deep, mysterious, and philosophically expensive. Instead of just building a grotto or placing a statue like normal rich people, some hired an actual man to live in a hut, cave, or fake ruin on the estate. His job was to look wise, melancholy, ancient, and preferably a little unwashed. Visitors could stroll through the landscaped garden, discover the resident hermit, and think profound thoughts like, "Wow, this property has atmosphere." Some contracts expected the hermit not to cut his hair or nails and to avoid ordinary social life. It was less employment and more becoming a decorative sad wizard. Imagine answering a job advertisement and realizing the position is basically live in my garden and improve the vibe. 10. Phone booth. Cramming exploded in the 1950s when students across the United States and beyond decided the peak of human achievement was fitting too many bodies into a tiny glass box. The rules were simple. Take an ordinary phone booth, gather a crowd of students, and compress them inside until basic geometry began filing complaints. Some groups claimed numbers above 20, which meant arms, knees, shoes, jackets, and personal dignity were all packed together like human luggage. It was a perfect college craze. Harmless-looking, competitive, photogenic, and stupid enough to become news. Newspapers published pictures. Rival campuses tried to beat each other, and everyone pretended this was a meaningful record. Before social media challenges, students still understood the sacred formula. Discomfort plus witnesses equals fame. The phone booth was not calling anyone. It was screaming. 11. Snapdragon was a Victorian party game that looked festive only if you defined festive as minor burns with snacks. Players placed raisins or almonds into a shallow bowl of brandy, set the alcohol on fire, then tried to snatch the treats out with their bare fingers and eat them while the blue flames danced across the bowl. It was especially popular around Christmas, because nothing says holiday spirit like gathering the family around a controlled indoor fire and daring children to grab dessert from it. The burning brandy created a ghostly glow. The room went dark, people shouted, fingers got singed, and everyone laughed because pain was apparently the 19th century version of party lighting. Snapdragon had atmosphere, danger, and raisins. That is a weird combination, but somehow still more exciting than most office holiday parties. 12. Cheese rolling is one of Britain's great contributions to civilization. People chase a wheel of cheese down a dangerously steep hill, fall like sacks of laundry, and then call it tradition. The most famous version happens at Cooper's Hill in Gloucestershire, where a round double Gloucester cheese is sent flying downhill and competitors launch themselves after it. The cheese gets a head start because apparently the dairy product also deserves sporting rights. The hill is so steep that running quickly becomes falling with ambition. People tumble, bounce, roll, collide, and occasionally leave with injuries that make you wonder if the cheese is actually the villain. Nobody really catches it cleanly, but whoever reaches the bottom first wins. It is absurd, ancient feeling, painful, and strangely beautiful. Humanity saw a hill and invented downhill cheese violence. 13. Laughing gas parties were fashionable in the early 19th century, when nitrous oxide was not yet mainly associated with dentistry and people were still discovering its effects. Public demonstrations and private gatherings allowed guests to inhale the gas and then stumble, giggle, shout nonsense, or behave as if their brain had briefly slipped on a polished floor. Scientists and lecturers presented it as a curiosity of chemistry, but audiences quickly noticed that the experiment also made parties extremely chaotic. For the upper classes, it was a socially acceptable way to become ridiculous while pretending to be interested in science. "I'm not getting silly," one imagines them saying, while wobbling near a sofa. "I am participating in chemical education." Before clubs, cinema, and modern party drugs, a room full of respectable people laughing at invisible jokes counted as elite entertainment. 14. Flea circuses were real. And yes, people paid money to watch insects perform tiny labor under magnifying glass. In the 19th and early 20th centuries, showmen displayed fleas attached to miniature harnesses, pulling little carriages, spinning wheels, or appearing to dance inside carefully built sets. The audience leaned in, squinted, and admired a spectacle that was part craft, part trickery, part, "Why are we all staring at parasites?" Fleas are strong for their size, so the basic idea was possible, though many shows mixed real insects with mechanical illusions. Either way, it was theater at a microscopic level. Before television, people wanted novelty, and novelty could mean a flea dragging a cart like the world's angriest tiny horse. It was entertainment so small you needed a lens, patience, and probably a strong tolerance for itching. 15. Mob football was medieval football after someone removed the rules, the referee, the field boundaries, and possibly basic mercy. Villages, towns, or rival groups would fight over an inflated animal bladder or ball and try to drag, kick, carry, or smash it toward a distant goal. The playing area might stretch across streets, fields, streams, bridges, and anything unlucky enough to exist between one side and the other. Shops could be damaged, bones could break, and authorities repeatedly tried to ban it because it looked less like sport and more like a riot with a ball somewhere inside. But people loved it because it gave entire communities a legal excuse to shove their neighbors into mud. Modern football has tactics, formations, and expensive shoes. Mob football had chaos, shouting, and the energy of a village settling centuries of gossip. 16. Paris. Sewer tours became a strange tourist attraction in the 19th century because Paris managed to make even wastewater feel sophisticated. In the 1880s, visitors could explore parts of the city's modern sewer system by boat or wagon, floating beneath the streets while guides explained the engineering marvel below the glamorous boulevards above. It sounds disgusting, and it probably smelled like reality had taken off its perfume. But at the time, the sewers represented modern progress. Organized drainage, urban planning, hygiene, and the hidden machinery of a great city. Tourists loved seeing the secret underside of Paris, because apparently after churches, cafes, and museums, the next logical stop was, please show me where the city goes to the bathroom. It was educational, elite, and deeply weird. The City of Love had a basement, and people bought tickets. 17. Penny shockers were arcade machines from the late 19th and early 20th centuries that offered customers a very direct form of fun. Pay a coin, hold metal handles, and let electricity punish your confidence. These machines appeared in amusement arcades, fairs, and penny in the slot venues, where people tested strength, nerves, and stupidity in public. Friends challenged each other to hold on longer as the current buzzed through their hands and arms. The appeal was simple. It was cheap, quick, painful, and gave everyone nearby something to laugh at without needing a plot. Electricity was still exciting and mysterious to many people, so getting shocked could feel like touching the future, if the future hated you. Today, we use electricity to charge phones. Back then, people paid electricity to insult their nervous system for entertainment. 18. Dance marathons turned fun into exhaustion during the 1920s and especially the Great Depression. Couples entered contests where they had to keep moving for days, weeks, and sometimes even longer, taking only brief rest breaks while audiences watched from the sidelines. The prize money could matter desperately to people in poverty, so what began as entertainment often became a brutal survival spectacle. Dancers shuffled half asleep, leaned on each other, hallucinated, collapsed, and were sometimes dragged back upright by partners trying to stay in the competition. Promoters sold tickets to watch endurance, romance, misery, and hope slowly grind together on the floor. It was not just dancing, it was capitalism in uncomfortable shoes. The crowd got drama, the contestants chased money, and the human body kept asking why nobody had invented a healthier hobby yet. 19. Gurning is a traditional British contest where people compete to make the ugliest possible face, often by sticking their head through a horse collar called a braffin. The result looks like a medieval portrait came alive and immediately regretted it. Competitors twist mouths, bulge eyes, fold cheeks, expose gums, and transform their faces into shapes nature probably filed as a complaint. The most famous gurning contests are linked to fairs in northern England, especially the Egremont Crab Fair, which has old roots in a proud tradition of facial chaos. It is wonderfully simple entertainment. No equipment beyond a collar, no advanced rules, no deep strategy, just the courage to look absolutely catastrophic in public. In a world obsessed with beauty filters, gurning is almost heroic. It says, I can become hideous on command, and I demand applause. 20. Cemetery picnics were common in parts of the 19th century, especially before many cities had large public parks. Rural cemeteries and landscaped burial grounds were often among the few peaceful green spaces available to ordinary families, so people used them for walking, relaxing, and even Sunday picnics. They brought food, sat on grass, visited relatives' graves, and treated the cemetery as both memorial space and public garden. To modern ears, eating sandwiches near tombstones sounds like a goth family barbecue. But for Victorians, death was more visible in daily life, and cemeteries were designed to be beautiful, reflective places rather than only silent zones of grief. Of course, spreading lunch across a grave marker still feels a little too casual. Pass the pie, dear, and try not to put the mustard on Uncle Henry. 21. Flagpole. Sitting became a bizarre American craze in the 1920s, when performers and fame seekers climbed onto tiny platforms at the top of flagpoles and stayed there for days or weeks. The king of the stunt was Alvin "Shipwreck" Kelly, who turned sitting very high in the air into a career, which is both impressive and deeply silly. Crowds gathered below, newspapers tracked the attempts, and cities treated the sitters like human weather vanes with better publicity. The challenge involved wind, rain, boredom, sleep deprivation, bathroom logistics, and the constant possibility of discovering gravity the hard way. It captured the decades' love of stunts, records, and spectacle. Before influencers climbed dangerous buildings for views, people climbed poles for headlines. Same human impulse, worse seating. 22. Puzzle jugs were tavern drinking vessels designed to humiliate exactly the kind of person who confidently says, "I can handle this." Popular in the 17th and 18th centuries, these ceramic jugs had holes around the neck, sides, or rim, making ordinary drinking impossible. The trick was to find hidden channels, often in the handle, then cover the correct holes with your fingers and sip through a secret spout. If you failed, wine or ale poured down your shirt while everyone in the tavern enjoyed your education. Some jugs even had teasing inscriptions, because apparently the pottery also wanted to insult you. It was a drinking game, puzzle, and prank in one object. A sober person might solve it. A drunk person had no chance, which was exactly why the jug existed. Ceramics with comedic timing. 23. Water jousting took the medieval love of hitting people with long poles and moved it onto boats, because land injuries were clearly not refreshing enough. In festivals across parts of Europe, competitors stood on narrow platforms at the back of boats, while rowers charged them toward each other. Each fighter held a long wooden lance and tried to knock the opponent into the water. It had all the drama of knightly combat, but with more splashing and less armor that made any sense near a river. The crowd got cheers, falls, revenge, and the deeply satisfying sight of a proud man being launched into cold water by another proud man with a stick. Some versions still survive today, especially in places like France. It is ceremonial, athletic, and basically slapstick with historical credentials. 24. Pterodomania, or fern fever, was the Victorian obsession with ferns because the 19th century could make even a damp leaf dramatic. In Britain, people of many classes became fascinated with collecting, growing, displaying, and studying ferns. Fern cases appeared in homes. Fern patterns decorated everything from pottery to textiles, and collectors wandered through woods, cliffs, and rocky places looking for rare specimens. Some risked dangerous climbs for plants, which is a very Victorian sentence. The craze was tied to science, fashion, empire, and the new popularity of natural history, but at street level it also meant people getting intensely competitive about foliage. Today, we argue over phones and cars. They argued over fronds. Imagine risking your ankle on a cliff because you spotted a slightly unusual fern and thought, "That belongs in my parlor immediately." 25. Bed pushing became a student stunt in the 1960s, when young people discovered that hospital beds had wheels and therefore could be turned into absurd endurance vehicles. Teams pushed beds along roads for huge distances, sometimes hundreds of miles, often raising money for charity or chasing records. The sight must have been magnificent. Students jogging down highways beside a rolling bed, as if someone had escaped a hospital and brought the furniture along for moral support. These events mixed prank culture, public spectacle, athletic effort, and the era's hunger for novelty records. The bed was not comfortable transportation, not fast transportation, and not sensible transportation. That was the point. It was a joke that became a journey. Before online challenges, you proved commitment by physically pushing a medical object across the country while motorists questioned civilization. 26. Gambling on raindrops is exactly the kind of entertainment people invent when winter is long. The tavern is warm, and absolutely nothing is happening. Men would bet on which raindrop would slide down a window pane first, turning weather into a tiny horse race with worse athletes. One drop starts strong, another merges with a neighbor, a third gets stuck on dirt, and suddenly a group of grown adults is shouting at glass like their financial future depends on moisture. This kind of small-stakes tavern gambling appears in folklore and rural memory because boredom has always been creative. When there is no television, no internet, no radio, and the roads are mud, a rainy window can become a racetrack. It is ridiculous, but also strangely understandable. Humanity needs drama, and if necessary, we will recruit condensation. 27. Phantasmagoria shows were horror entertainment before cinema, using magic lanterns, smoke, darkness, mirrors, hidden operators, and moving projections to make ghosts, demons, skeletons, and spirits appear to rush toward the audience. In the late 18th and early 19th centuries, these performances became popular in Europe, especially in dark rooms that were carefully staged to unsettle people. The images could grow, shrink, glide, vanish, or float like supernatural visitations. Audiences knew, at least partly, that it was technology, but the atmosphere still worked because humans are extremely brave until something pale moves in a smoky basement. It was a haunted house, slide projector, theater trick, and psychological prank all fused together. Before horror movies, people paid to sit in darkness and let clever mechanics convince them death had entered the room. Honestly, fair trade. 28. Adult top whipping was a winter pastime in early modern Europe, where people, including adults, drove large wooden spinning tops through streets using whips. The goal was to keep the top moving, spinning, and bouncing along while cracking the whip at it again and again. Children played versions of this, but grown men also took part, especially when cold weather made outdoor exercise useful. It sounds childish until you imagine a group of adults sprinting through narrow streets, whipping giant tops like they are training rebellious furniture. The activity warmed the body, created noise, displayed skill, and probably annoyed everyone trying to carry bread home in peace. It was exercise disguised as play, or play disguised as exercise. Before gyms, people found fitness in the most chaotic possible objects: wood, string, and public inconvenience. 29. Snail racing is proof that gambling does not require speed. It only requires uncertainty, a surface, and people willing to become emotionally invested in mollusks. Competitors place snails on a table, circle, board, or marked track. Then watch them slowly slide toward victory with the urgency of a government form. The tension comes from the absurd slowness. A snail turns left. The crowd gasps. Another pauses for no clear reason. Someone's hopes collapse. The favorite goes into what appears to be deep philosophical reflection halfway through the race. Snail racing has existed in folk settings and still survives as novelty entertainment because it is cheap, funny, and impossible to take seriously unless you have money on number 7. It is the perfect anti-sport. No speed, no violence, no strategy, just slime and destiny. 30. Pedestrianism was one of the 19th century's biggest spectator sports, and yes, it was basically professional walking. Athletes competed in endurance events that could last for days, including famous 6-day races where competitors circled indoor tracks while huge crowds watched, cheered, bet, and followed newspaper updates. The best walkers became celebrities, earning prize money and public fame. To modern people, paying to watch someone walk in circles for nearly a week sounds like being trapped inside a fitness tracker. But at the time, endurance was thrilling. Could the walker keep going? Would he collapse? Would the rival overtake him at hour 90? It had drama, gambling, national pride, and the slow suspense of human legs refusing to quit. Before football-filled stadiums, walking very far could make you famous. History is weirdly motivational. 31. Ram wrestling at rural fairs belongs to that wide historical category called men proving things nobody asked them to prove. At agricultural gatherings, strength contests often included wrestling in mud, lifting heavy objects, chasing animals, or battling for prizes that were practical rather than symbolic. A live ram could be a valuable reward, so winning one was not just glory. It was dinner, breeding stock, wool, and bragging rights with horns. The image is beautifully absurd. A muddy champion, exhausted and proud, carrying a ram home on his shoulders like he has conquered a woolly dragon. These events mixed sport, farm life, spectacle, and local masculinity. Nobody needed a streaming platform. The village fair had everything: noise, animals, dirt, bets, and a prize that might headbutt you before breakfast. 32. Ouija board parlor games became wildly popular in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, especially after the talking board was marketed as a commercial product in the 1890s. For many families and friend groups, it was less a terrifying occult object and more a parlor amusement, sitting somewhere between fortune-telling, party game, flirtation tool, and spooky conversation starter. People gathered around, place their fingers on the planchette, ask questions, and watch letters spell out answers that seemed mysterious enough to cause shrieking, laughing, or suspicious accusations against Cousin Edward. Spiritualism was fashionable, death was close in everyday life, and the board gave ordinary people a thrilling sense that the invisible world might be available after dinner. Today, horror movies made it sinister. Back then, it could simply be Friday night entertainment with ghosts as unpaid guests. 33. Hoop rolling was one of the great simple pleasures of the 19th century. A child took a wooden or metal hoop, hit it with a stick, and ran after it through streets, paths, or yards for as long as energy and road conditions allowed. That was it. No levels, no scoreboard, no downloadable content. Just a wheel, a stick, and pure commitment to keeping the circle alive. It sounds incredibly basic, but it trained coordination, speed, balance, and concentration. It also fit a world where toys were often simple, durable, and used outdoors until they broke or the child did. Paintings and photographs show children proudly guiding hoops like tiny engineers managing runaway wheels. Compared to modern entertainment, it is almost aggressively humble. And yet, give a kid a rolling object and a mission, and boredom immediately has competition. So now be honest, which insane pre-internet pastime did we miss that deserves to be dragged into the spotlight? And do not come into the comments with something cute like people read books. I mean the truly unhinged stuff your country, town, or ancestors somehow called entertainment. Drop the weirdest one below, hit like if at least one of these made you question humanity, and subscribe, because history clearly has more bad ideas than the internet ever did.